What's going on?
Family Matters.
Oh,
Kevin Peterson.
yeah.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you, buddy?
Oh, I'm sure I could find something to complain about, but no one wants to listen anyway. Plus, I don't want to complain and get an invoice for your family therapy, so I'll just keep it in like I always do. So,
yeah, well, the meter's running, so just be clear.
And I have yet to pay an invoice, as you know. So, anyway, we do this to the best of our ability. Family Matters, sponsored by the one and only Jaywalker Lodge. Mr. Kevin Peterson heads up their family department over there. So I still call him the Family Whisperer. We do this to the best of our ability on Thursdays-ish, around this time-ish, and we answer your questions. So keep the questions coming. And
Ish.
Yeah.
So, we answer your questions, ish.
Yeah. No, that's not a good leader, Kevin. That's not, we're trying to look professional, but
all right. We answer your questions with all sorts of incredible and integrity. All right.
And if we get too uncomfortable, we just kind of switch mid sentence. So anyway. Alrighty, we did it to the best of our ability. We did. We got a couple comments that were DM'd to me, and we can touch on it. But basically, it was saying we were talking about sometimes facilities may or may not. We didn't come out and say may, or we say may not, but we just put it out there that treatment facilities may or been. Maybe preparing people for second, third, fourth times around. But so the question, well, basically, it's a flat out question. I don't need to paraphrase, but they were saying, are you guys saying there's a financial incentive in keeping treatment episodes instead of long-term family integrated care? Are you saying there's the financial investment in keeping or having clients and families return to you? So on paper, yes, there is a financial investment, but
like I said, I don't think there's a guy in the back who's got an evil genius plan of, hey, what we can do, and and I think the thing. I'm going to sort of sidestep this because I'm a therapist, and that's not a therapy question, and I want to stay in my lane. Okay, I've been thinking about this since our last talk. I was like, ooh, I think I might have steered out of my lane a little bit there.
Welcome to my life.
Yeah. Okay, so here's where I come from, and let me stay in my lane. If you're putting a loved one into a treatment program, if they don't have a fully robust family program, and by that I mean regular engagement with a family therapist, not an individual therapist, a regular family group and regular family weekends, or whatever we're calling it, then I would reconsider that treatment center. And I know that's only a certain number, but we invested in it, and we do it on purpose because it creates better results. We tell families, sure, everyone thinks we're a 90-day program. We're not. We're a 9-month or a 12-month program. But the reason why is when you go through it that much time and put all that investment into it, the odds are you're not coming back. A lot of our clients have, their repeat customers, or they've done 30-day programs. Or my other favorite is, well, we put them into an IOP program and that didn't work. I'm like, yeah, of course not. So again, I'm going to very neatly sidestep that answer about that question. And my answer is, well, if I were you, I would be looking for a program that has a robust family program and is longer than 30 days. Yeah. And I realize the pushback on that is going to be insurance, et cetera, et cetera. And I understand that. I understand that there's financial situation, and I completely get that. But there are programs that'll do 30 inpatient and then do PHP, IOP, they'll come at you with, this is not a 30-day program. So that's my answer.
I like, so the things I've kind of said, and I've had some conversations with some people in and out of the industry, and I think what I'll say is this, through my lenses and my eyes, 30-day treatment. If someone's doing just 30-day treatment, there's not beneficial and not enough time to get into deep family work. And so I will say that, some facilities do hold back on digging deep within the family dynamics because they don't want that individual going back into the family with this bomb that just exploded 3 days ago. And then they're like, good luck to you, so there is I will say with 30-day treatment and what we call kind of short-term treatment, there's sometimes in a clinical or whatever perspective, you don't want to throw bombs into a family and then, discharge that guy 3 days later. That's causing more damage. So I would say the 30-day places, would have to pick and choose. Sometimes they can't get into that deep finance, the family sculpting or anything like that. So.
Look at you dropping the family sculpting.
Well, there's a bunch of guys came to Tennessee, so I had dinner with a lot of, and all they would talk about was family sculpts. So
a little Virginia satire action there, baby. You're digging into that's my goods. That's my stuff. So here's the thing, and I'm so we can put this to bed. But
yeah.
I agree with what you're saying. It's the equivalent. So this is what happens, right? They have the 30-day program. And then they send the individual off with a treatment recommendation or a discharge plan of, well, you need to go to sober living, you need to go to PHP, IOP, and you need to go to AA, fully knowing they're not going to do any of it, And it's the same thing as bringing the family in and saying, okay, we did a family session at the last week, and here's what you need to do. Here's our recommendation. You got to get a family therapist. Everybody's got to go to therapy. Everyone's got to go to Al-Anon, fully knowing they're not going to do it. And so to me, that's a little disingenuous. I really feel like, I know they're trying, but it's like, my position with the families that we work with are always like, well, when do we start doing real family therapy? I'm like, oh, your person isn't anywhere near ready. We want them focused on them. Because the moment they start talking to you, they're going to be thinking about home and how they owe you and the shame. And it's like, no. We got to get them hard sober. And then we can start talking about the big picture stuff. So that's enough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you touched on it, and I think let's just go into it because I know
Sure.
through the couple of weeks and so forth, talking particularly around short-term versus long-term. And, we both kind of expressed the benefits of long-term and you touched on the financial responsibility and so forth like that. So, there's some questions. So we had one question, I'll just get into it. And they're saying, like, I see what you're saying because behind the premise of long-term recovery, it's the length of stay, but it's also allowing the family to change, the community integration of some sorts, and just separation from whatever it is that it's causing. So they're saying, is it the long-term recovery, basically, is it staying within a program that whole time, or is there something that can be done outside of a treatment kind of program?
Well, sure. I mean, you can recreate your own extended care program for yourself and your family members and the individual that's struggling with addiction. Absolutely. No questions asked. It's going to take a little bit of effort and time to find a family therapist that understands addiction and codependency. You have to find an individual therapist, maybe more than one, that understands addiction and codependency and trauma. You're going to have to, everyone's got to make the commitment, and everyone has to be digging in and focusing. I'm not saying you can't do it. it's a lot harder when it's you guys putting it together. And then like I have a curriculum for my families of homework, and I have this is similar to the curriculum that the guys have at Jaywalker. So when they come together, they're talking about a lot of the same stuff, and they're reading the same books, and they're talking about the same stuff, and that makes it really, we walk into the room ready to go. They're like, oh yeah, I watched that video. Like this family I saw on Monday, I assigned to them Jim Carrey's commencement speech. I don't know if you ever saw that.
Yeah.
Maharishi, it was freaking incredible, and I loved it. And so this kid was like, oh, you just don't know what I'm going to do or what I'm going to do. And so I made him watch it, and we had a really cool conversation about it, and so I think it's hard to put all the pieces together in a unified concept, and I think that's the big challenge. Plus, everyone's got to be committed, and when somebody's in treatment, they're committed. Yeah, you know the difference between being involved and being committed, Jay?
Oh boy, what's this?
And the bacon and egg breakfast, the chicken is involved. The pig is committed. So you gotta be the pig, man. You gotta be committed. So sorry.
Was that your therapist hat? Was that the question? Is that therapy, or that was
that's like an old AA wisdom thing right there,
Real? God, I haven't heard that one. So I guess I got to keep coming back. Let me ask you. We always touch on it, and it always gets me every single time when I hear you talk, and we kind of bounce back. What would you? I don't know if there's even an answer to this, but I mean, you guys at Jaywalker, they do an incredible amount of family involvement. But what do you think treatment would look like if we treated, I don't want to say the family as the primary kind of client, but 1A.
Well,
what would you think treatment would look like?
Well, I can tell you what it looks like, because that's what we do. We talk about how the client is the guy at Jaywalker. The customer is the family, and we take that really seriously. And because we know if the customer, if the family system isn't on board with changing, the guy doesn't stand a chance, He won't have any support. And I don't mean like they're against him, but he's just going to be out there by himself, sort of sailing across the ocean solo. And eventually he's going to freak out a little bit. But if you have the entire family system engaged in the process of recovery and education and therapy, all of a sudden, we're having different conversations at the dinner table, and Thanksgiving and Christmas and, dinner, those are different, right? They're not drunk fests, and they're more along the lines of, hey, let's all hang together and see how things go, and talk about things. And it's, I was telling my sponsor on Tuesday, we were having this really deep discussion, and we were laughing, and I said, I just came here to quit drinking. And you people made me start doing all this other stuff. And he's cracking up. He's like, yeah, I know, right?
Amen.
Right. What the hell? But what would it look like? It would look like, okay, in a perfect world, we would keep our clients for a year, just no questions asked. And the families would be engaged, and it would be mandatory for everyone to be doing a little bit of individual therapy. We'd be, after a certain time, we'd be doing serious family therapy. To be totally blunt, a lot of times, let's say it's a guy in his 20s or 30s, what becomes evident quickly is we really need to be doing some couples therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Not with him, because what's happening is the stuff's starting to surface, right? And so that tends to be the bigger question. There's, like you were just at Onsite, there's these week or 2 week long trauma camps and survivors at the Meadows and all the other places that do amazing stuff like that. If it was up to me, that would be a mandatory thing for all family members, And when they start with, I don't have any trauma, I'm like, well, you've been living with this guy for 30 years. That ain't fun. So that's what it would look like.
So I don't know what it is about you, but you trigger some. I got two questions. I think that we've skipped over probably months and months ago. This is all me basically, but
Okay.
we're a team. But it triggered. I mean, my memory, and so I got two. We'll start. Now I just forgot them. Oh, there's some people that have reached out to the course, and maybe it's because there's not an actual question, it's basically just a statement. But I'll ask you, Mr. Family Director at Jaywalker, how do you decide who's involved in the family kind of component and so forth like that? And because I will preface this by saying what caused it is there's some people, and I don't remember, but we can just say maybe an ex-wife, an ex, or maybe a current, how do you, what's the decision that goes into who's all involved? Because some people may or may not feel left out. Like, why am I not part of this? I'm in his or her life.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And so, what we do, right? What I do is I do family sessions with the families. And they always ask that. I've got couple of kids in college. There's an aunt and an uncle, and and there's a cousin who's actually like his brother. And I'm like, absolutely, I would love to have them here, and they please bring them to the Thursday night meeting, our big family group meeting. But here's the thing: they got to do the homework.
Yeah,
this is not a show up and bitch session, or tell drama stories. This is show up, ready to go, and what are you learning? What's the how can you take your experience and apply it into the homework? And let me tell you, I can always tell who's not doing the homework, right? Because they show up and they're like, oh well, yeah, I mean, it's good. I'm like, come on, what's good mean? It means I haven't done it. Okay, well, I want you to understand, how would you feel if the guy who's in treatment spending all that money said, yeah, I'm not doing any of this. I'm just hanging out. You'd be pissed. And they're like, yeah. I said, so it's kind of the same thing, and goes back to my saying, you can't expect them to do something you're not willing to do.
No.
Bottom line. Yeah.
Let's call the guy that refused to do homework Jay, and just sits in the back. This brings back to my school days. Like, sit in the back and then start doing homework right before the class. Like, gotten pretty good at it. Here's something that hits home with me, being with kind of, let's just say, a treatment veteran. Like, I always had clinical envy. Like, I get stuck with a counselor, and then all of a sudden, like, I hear another counselor like lead a group or talk, and I'm like, I need that counselor. I don't know why I get stuck with, whatever it may be. And actually, any counselor of mine that's looking, you guys all did your job. Don't worry about it. I complain. But so the question from the family perspective is, like, I believe this family member had went through a family program at the said facility, and they were caught off guard by saying, hey, like, other parents talking about their client loves their counselor and so forth, and all they heard from their loved one was they hated their counselor, couldn't relate to the counselor and stuff like that. So I think the question was, are all, like, what goes when a counselor lines up with a client, are all therapists, counselors the same? This is from the family. Are they all the same? And like, is it even possible that it's a luck of the draw, and like my loved one can go and get mismatched with the wrong counselor?
Yeah, are all therapists created equal? And the answer is no, but that's on purpose. Okay, and so the way I can tell you the way we do things, and I really like the way we do things, is our guys come in for the first 2 weeks minimum at the landing, which is kind of like our inpatient environment where they really have a very heavy monitoring. Someone's always with them, 24/7. We have a psychologist there, Dr. Brian Daniels, who's phenomenal. This guy's absolutely incredible. And it's his job over the 2-week period to assess them and match them with the appropriate individual therapist when they transition to the lodge. So that's how we do things. I cannot imagine having someone walk into a short-term 30, 40-day, 45-day program, and then them just saying, you're going to work with Kevin. It's like, okay, who's Kevin and why am I talking to him? And, how do I know I'm comfortable with that? And so that's why I think you gotta have like a waiting period, right? There's got to be and in that waiting period, he's obviously talking to therapists, going to groups, talking to our psychiatrist, engaging. He's not just sitting there, but then once we establish, oh, you know what, this guy is an academic, and we have a therapist who's an academic. Oh, perfect. This guy's a surfer. Oh, we got a guy who's a surfer. Fantastic. This guy's married with children. Oh, we have a therapist who's married with children. It's really critical to take the time and make the match and really make that happen. Really make that happen. Now, I have to tell you what we hear. Then what we hear is he says he's not getting enough therapy. We always have primaries and secondaries. But I'll tell you what Dennis Bollinger, our clinical director, our chief clinical officer, says. The therapy isn't what's going to keep him sober. It's his engagement in the 12-step community and his peer community and creating that bond. That's what's going to keep him sober. 5 years from now, he's not going to remember who his therapist was. He is going to remember the guys he went through treatment with and the meetings he went to and the sponsor he had. And that's the key. And it's the truth. And, do they get therapy? Yeah, they get plenty of therapy, but this tends to be one of those, summer camp problems where, like, he says the food's bad. He's not getting enough therapy. He says you guys have been, they don't do anything. I'm like, okay, let's just take a deep breath and realize he doesn't want to be here. So he's just throwing cards out to see which one you'll pick up, So yeah, God, I got long answers today.
Well, let's hit you with one more.
Oh, God, please.
We got to get this. It's been a couple of weeks. So a long email, but let's just say, here's a mom and dad that feel that they're being blamed for the relapse of their son, who has struggled a lot and been through, sounds like, several treatment episodes and so forth like that. She in turn has asked, like, what's expected of us as a family member? Like, we are not intentionally or unintentionally trying to sabotage relapse or anything like that. She has a long paragraph of saying, like, we are always willing to do whatever. We jump on calls. Do I call them? Do I wait for their call? Like, she lists a bunch of things, but she's like, what is our responsibility so that we're not being blamed for relapse? Which is a great question.
It is. And I'm going to do the therapist thing. I'm not going to answer that question first. I'm going to go to the real question. To me, there's the issue behind it, right? And I want to be clear to this family and every other family that's listening, which is probably like two. You are not responsible for his relapse. You are not responsible for his drinking. You are not responsible for his drug use or his stupid decisions or his stupid behavior. That is not your responsibility. That is what has to be stopped right there. And now we're emphasizing why the family has to get into their own recovery, because she's still assuming responsibility for his behavior. And as long as she's doing that, he'll do it. He'll be like, yeah, this is your fault. You need to buy me a car. I may or may not have said that, or, this is your fault and you need to pay my rent, or this is your fault. And that's hooey. That's just BS hooey nonsense. He needs to stand on his own 2 feet and get up and get crack-a-lacking, and get into the world. And so the answer, is how do you respond to that? How do you talk to them? This is where I think it's so important for the families to be doing the family work and the homework and reading and going to, 12-step meetings and doing their own therapy and learning strong boundaries. And let's be clear, boundaries without any sort of accountability are really just words, So when he throws that back at you, you can say, wow, I hear what you're saying, and I'm really sad to hear that you relapsed, but it's not my fault. And how, what, we're willing to put you back into treatment, or we're willing to, blah, 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 but we're not going to take responsibility for your behavior and your actions. And that's really the bottom line, is that, we literally had this conversation this week with a family. I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. And because they always are like, well, we want to do anything that's going to upset him. And I'm like, okay, time out, stop. That's the old system. We're all going to walk around on thin ice and make sure everything's okay, and I'm like, no, screw that. That system's over with, Now, you don't have to get mean, but you don't have to do that anymore. And that's the hard part for them, because it's years of them accommodating and learning how not to do that and pull back. So that's what we got to work on.
Yeah. I will say, on the flip side of that is I know it happens, and so I'm not going to say the old wink, wink, but there's times when the facility is blaming mom and dad, and mom and dad may be buying that car or maybe whatever it may be, and they don't know any different, or so, so I have seen it, heard it, where facilities need to stop blaming families if they're not educating or kind of working with said family. So, the individual, I'll blame my family, whatever, or blame anyone other than me. But, treatment facilities it goes back to the family involvement. Like, you can't just ice out the family while and then start blaming, because they're buying them or paying rent or something. They don't know any different.
Yes, exactly. And that's, you said something that triggered me, and I was like, ah! Okay. Name that movie, Lethal Weapon 2, but whatever. There are times when the parents are actively working against our recommendations. So they're not responsible for the kid drinking or using drugs, but they sure as hell are responsible for creating the runway for that to happen. When they're not willing to follow our advice or say, hey, this is what we think he should do, and this is how we think it should go, that's okay. So, you're putting him in harm's way. Now, you have to assume responsibility for that. You have to assume responsibility for it. I always tell him, you're not responsible for his addiction. You're responsible for how you respond to it. And if you're going to respond by saying, oh, okay, go back into that same neighborhood, and we all know what's going to happen,
Yeah. Well, yeah. I loaded you up. I got you worked up long enough, but take the rest of the day off. You brought it, but we'll do this to the best of our ability next week. Keep the questions coming. Keep the statements, and if you don't think that you're offending us or anyone, let's talk about it. And we've gotten a lot of feedback that says we've gotten a lot of new viewers, I think, because there's a lot of should have came across to you earlier and so forth like that. So keep it up, Kevin. I will see you next week to the best of our ability.
I'll be in Colorado next week, so it'll be